Welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health. Today's episode goes beneath habits and affirmations into the deeper intelligence that quietly runs our life. Today's conversations explore mindfulness as a coping tool, but as a doorway into conscious creation, where healing, intention, and vitality begin at the root. Our guest, Dr. Rochelle Vogt, works at the intersection of mindfulness, nervous system awareness, and conscious living, helping people move out of survival mode and into intentional, embodied choice. Dr. Rochelle, it's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's totally our pleasure. So, Dr. Rochelle, you talk about moving from survival mode to creator mode. What's the clearest sign someone is still living in survival?
Yeah, one of the primary ways that we operate in our world is constantly bombarded by messages of there's something wrong with us. There's a problem to fix. Every single advertisement that we encounter, and now we're a society that is very, very addicted to phones and internet, and so we're constantly getting this message that there's something that we need to fix or shift, or that the things that we are experiencing are problems, instead of actually seeing them as opportunities to go deeper and learn more and understand maybe patterns. So when we're in that, excuse me, problem solution orientation, where everything is a problem, we solve that, and then we're faced with yet another one. We can kind of exhaust ourselves because we're constantly giving our subconscious mind the message that something is wrong.
Mm,
And even when we're doing what we think is the good work and looking at our issues and, kind of diving in and fixing those long term problems and feeling like we're working in with the shadow and doing all of that, if we're looking at it as a problem, we're still constantly cueing our subconscious mind that there's a threat, there's a problem. So when we shift into what I like to call the creation orientation, where we actually align our energies and our consciousness and all of our parts, all of those pieces of us that might have um, different desires. When we align all of that toward and orienting toward a goal, we can put our creation energy full force into what we're creating instead of what we're solving. And as we do that, the work that I do is to help people then understand the resistance between where they are now and where they actually want to be. And
mm,
I think that when we're constantly bombarded, as I said, with so many messages of what's
mm.
wrong, we actually forget that what we're trying to create. We just kind of start to go on autopilot fixing problems. So that's another big piece of stepping out of the problem solution and into what is it that I really want? What is it that I desire?
Mm. Yes, yes, I totally agree. And it is something that makes me curious about why do high functioning people often miss this about themselves?
Mm. Yeah, I think, and I'm sure many of your listeners can relate to this, and I certainly had this experience. We are rewarded in our families and in our societies for being really good, resourceful problem solvers. So
Yeah.
when so much of our identity is wrapped into, I will figure this out. We get a health issue. We're going to be a health warrior and we're going to, we're going to do all this work. We're going to research. We're going to fix the problem. But all of that intense energy, which a lot of high functioning people really orient and their lives around, making this happen and pushing, because that again has been a piece of how they've been rewarded and how they've moved to the level that they may be at. And so it becomes a pattern,
Mm,
my identity, I'm resourceful. I know how to do this. I can manage. I can get to the top of the mountain. And I think that because that's rewarded, we have a hard time in making that mental shift, and that's also why the old adage goes, a lot of people get to the top of the mountain, and then
mm.
they see the view, and they're like, "Why did I struggle to get here? This isn't even what I want."
Yeah. Yes.
We really do have to ask those tough questions. What is it that I want?
Mm. Yes, yes,
Want.
yes, true. And I feel like at some point it so happens that these habits become subconsciously part of us. And your explanation helps understand how survival can hide in plain sight. And it also brings me to our second layer, which is healing that happens beneath awareness. Dr. Rochelle, your work goes beyond revisiting trauma. Why isn't reliving the past always necessary for healing?
That's a very good question. I think it's important for people to know that we have made a lot of advances in the field of psychology and in understanding how to work with trauma. And where the old model was to simply relive it by telling it, and we're used to be an understanding that there was a process that you could go through just by having that experience a few times, working through it. And I don't mean at all to leave people thinking that they shouldn't, or that that's a bad road to go. There's a place for talk therapy, but there are so many other tools that can help shift what the lasting effects of trauma are physiologically and neurophysiologically, so we can really work with um, everything from EMDR or tapping. The MAP method is what I'm working with now. It takes advantage of this, what we understand in neuroscience is the reconsolidation window. So we're able to actually allow the work of shifting and completing um, the processes that trauma often stops, and allowing that to literally leave your circuits, your
Mm,
circuitry. And so you will still have the memory, but it will not be charged. And that is a really powerful experience for people to know, like, I can go and just be in the experience of, yeah, I have this thing I want to work on, not have to speak about it and therefore bring back really specific, difficult experiences. But just
mm,
in the process of saying, yeah, I had this experience and I want to work on it, we're bringing from the subconscious mind out of dormant memory into active experience all of those memories. We're not like sitting there talking and hashing out everything that happened, but it's just by the process of sort of tagging it, if you will, by saying, yeah, I'm here to work on that. It's coming up. It's available. When we do this work with the superconscious development work, we can take the sting, take the potency and the difficulty out of the emotion and the memory, so that you can, yes, that happened, but it no longer now dictates your life. Because when you have those memories that are charged, that's why we're making decisions from that traumatized place, where
mm,
we're running our life from the place of the fears that operate from that trauma. And when we take the charge out of it, suddenly we actually feel this expanded sense of like, oh, I can make decisions from a grounded place again. I'm not caught
mm.
up in the charge of that trauma. So it's a you know um, so many more powerful ways we can approach kind of shifting the intensity from traumatic experiences without reliving
Mm.
them by speaking
Yes,
about them.
yes, yes. I feel like what you're saying totally shifts the focus from memory to capacity and opens a deeper conversation about intention itself. So, how does intention differ from wishful thinking at the level of consciousness?
Well, I think a piece of that is, if I'm understanding correctly, a piece is just our mindful awareness, where we're placing our intention, um, allowing the awareness, the observer self to notice
Mm,
and to not necessarily get attached. And I think from that place too, where we have an intention or working through something or moving through some resistance, we can begin to have more rapport with the pieces of us that might be stuck and might have a different desire. Like consciously, we may desire the business success, for example. But maybe there are parts of us that were traumatized when we did public speaking in the past, and those parts are trying to keep us safe from situations where we might have to put ourselves on a stage and speak from our authority. So, but instead of thinking like, well, that part's wrong, it's
mm,
actually very right. It's trying to protect you from something it knows, that
mm,
it's been through, but also the subconscious is wired for our survival. So it knows we can survive that. So it often creates this, regardless of our intention, it creates this environment where we feel like we can't move past that. So when we can use our mindful awareness, bring our intention in there, and then actually embrace those parts that might be creating resistance to our end goal,
Hmm.
we can then move the whole and orient the whole situation toward what we want with a greater understanding of those pieces that
Mm.
might have been at odds with our intention.
Yes, yes, to proceed with the benefit of doubt of what we're feeling, to accepting um, the understanding that it may have some good intention behind how it behaves. So, yeah, it makes total sense to me. And I feel like the distinction here that we need to focus on is that intention is something lived, not imagined as wishful thinking is. And it also makes me curious about something that why people still feel stuck after doing so much work for that. Many people practice mindfulness but still feel stuck. What do you think is usually missing there, Dr. Rochelle?
Yeah, that's a very important piece of inquiry because I think that I felt in that exact situation for myself, and I know many of your listeners may feel that way.
Mm.
I think the pieces that have come into clear focus for me is that there are different aspects of our journey. One is actually getting mastery over our states. And that mindfulness is a really valuable tool to begin to understand, you know, how to control our different states. And people can use meditation. Many people will go on
Mm.
retreats. They'll do all kinds of different, breathing exercises or programs. And that is a beautiful way to help us learn how to shift our state. And then beyond that, we have to, as I said, grow that rapport with all the pieces of us. And many people are familiar with internal family systems. There are lots of other different approaches to understanding those different parts and pieces of ourselves. So we grow from the observer self with our states to understanding maybe more of the insights from these aspects of us that may be in resistance to where we want to go. And in embracing those, instead of shunning them and pushing and creating more resistance and friction, we
Mm.
actually work to understand why. Why is it that I have resistance because of this part of me? And part of that will be shifting emotions and memories and clearing
Mm.
them. Part of that will be just understanding long term patterns in a new frame. And
Mm.
I think the other thing for me is that when I was doing this work and working with myself and feeling more and more liberated from past issues, memories, traumas, grief, all of those things, the orientation of what it is that I'm actually trying to create, I had lost touch with that. Where am I actually going? What is it that I want? What is it I'm trying to create? And when we go within that structure and container, we are always orienting toward the end result and we can slowly shift
Mm.
using, for example, neuro emotional techniques, using the meditation by being it, like imagining where you want to be 6 months from now with deep, rich, um, sensory information. And when we do that, we're actually training our subconscious mind that it's safe. So instead of putting all of our eggs in the basket of, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to change my state, or I'm going to do this meditation every day, those are all beautiful things and they do help our nervous system. And they're powerful tools. But if we're not actually going into, the philosopher's fire, the imagination, and using that by being, even if it's just 2 minutes a day around each of the goals that you are
Mm.
trying to create, the things you're trying to create, 2 minutes of being in a very rich experience where you go into the imagination, you're imagining, you're breathing with the lungs of the person who's already there, the version of you that's already there. You
Mm.
are taking in the sights and the sounds, and your subconscious mind does not know the difference. When you go into that experience, it thinks it's right now.
Mm.
It's not right now. It's where you want to go when you create what it is that you're orienting toward, that healthy body. A lot of people struggle with health issues because they're on this sort of oscillating cycle. And they need to go toward creating that healthy body by every day experiencing a version of that in their imagination. And as they do, they are laying the circuitry for being comfortable and safe. So when they get there, they don't have that repeat pattern where some part of them throws them back into an issue
Mm.
because they feel safer there.
Yes, yes. I feel like embracing the journey rather than just focusing on the result while trying to make that journey as peaceful as possible and understanding that if your body is reacting in a way, try to look at it at the core point, understand the core problem at there and take actions. And I love how you suggest mindfulness as isn't the end point, but it's actually the start point, the ignition for a more healthy life. And that being said, I would love to ask you a question for our listeners. If someone wants to reclaim vitality in midlife, where should awareness be directed first?
Mm. Yes, where should awareness be directed? I think first, um, it's important, especially in midlife, because I think our perspectives shift, and that isn't often discussed in society. So we can suddenly have a shift in our values and our how we want to show up in the world, or what it
Mhm.
is that we ultimately wish to create. And if we're still holding on to the old version of ourselves, we can I kind of trip up on orienting toward where we'd like to end up. So, first, I think is reevaluating and
Mm.
being okay with that. It's just because we're taking a look at who we are and what we want. It doesn't, and I think a lot of people, there's that old term midlife crisis. There's a feeling like that there's something wrong with that, and there isn't. It's just like when you change tastes in the favorite food you order when you go to your restaurant. Just nothing wrong. You just
Mm.
decided that you wanted something different. And so, first, we need to take the judgment out of having those shifts. And then, um, when we choose, I'm on this path and I'm creating vitality and it looks like this for me. And we go into that space of seeing it. And I think that's so important because we are so um, rich with visuals in our world, we often will take someone else's picture of what we want, some image that we saw, some AI generated image that we saw. And there's nothing wrong with having your curiosity and having your visual stimulation give you ideas, but we really do want to see us in that image. Um, and then begin to understand what might be holding us back or keeping us from really embracing it. That's that resistance. And when I talk about that creation orientation, it's understanding where we want to be fully and being in it. And that, like I said, that narrow emotional kind of deep meditation around it, even if it's brief, we're teaching our nervous system and our circuitry it's safe. And then truly understanding where we are now. And as we do that, we can gain those deeper insights into what might be preventing us from accessing that vitality and really living into it in its fullest. And those parts, when we build, as I said before, build rapport with them, we can understand them at a deeper level. And that understanding helps unravel that resistance so quickly. And I think we just often, um, make the vision board or do something
Mm.
external that allows us to think we're orienting towards something. And we haven't done that sort of deeper, reflective, mindful observation that really helps release us from those processes, those maybe older ways of being in the world that are stopping us from accessing our
Yeah.
creation, that vitality that we seek.
True, true. I feel like the transformation, the first focus points of awareness that you just stated are very precise rather than being overwhelming, as most of focal points for listeners make them feel. So thank you for that. And Dr. Rochelle, before we wrap this episode for our listeners who would love to connect with you, can you please tell them the ways to do so?
Yeah, of course. I can be found online at drrochellevogt.com. That's
Mhm.
DrRochellevOgt.com. And you can also get at if you did slash free gift, you can get some information on using some of the best different conscious breathing techniques to really develop that power of presence and help access a state where you can calm the nervous system. And I always like to make sure my clients know that we only heal in one place. We heal in the parasympathetic state, and our
Oh,
life is very driven by more sympathetic dominant activities. So
mm,
when we can go into something like a breathing practice, as you know, then we can go into that calm space. And as many of your listeners know, that's where the body finally does rest and digest and heal. And that's a beautiful place also to do that imagining into the future. What is it that I want to
mm.
create? And asking those deeper questions. So I invite listeners to find that free resource also and to just enjoy that process of the present moment expanded when we can breathe and calm our systems.
Yes, yes, living in the present moment with the calm mind sounds amazing to me. And for our listeners who would love to connect with you, the website link will be in show notes, so I request all of them to go and check that too. Well, Dr. Rochelle, it was such an insightful conversation with you. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was really lovely discussing this with you.
Yes, thank you. Mindfulness isn't about managing life, it's about meeting it from a deeper seat of intelligence. If this conversation resonated, pause today and notice where intention is being overridden by old patterns. Awareness at the root doesn't just heal, it liberates. Thank you for tuning in. This has been your host Charu, and you've been listening to Inner Peace, Better Health. For peace is power, and overthinking's overrated. And before you head out, tap follow, subscribe, and leave a review, whether you loved this episode or just mildly enjoyed it. We'll take both.